Hello, everybody. Well, I want to say hello, and here we are in steps. I will change some of the things online to reflect what it really is. Today, we're going to go through steps 5, 6, and 7, and then our next session, which I'm not sure when it'll be, will be 8 and 9. I'm sorry to have to broadcast this earlier, but I had a need tonight to be in a meeting for work. So it is what it is. So you get to see the recording today. Hope all is well. In reality, to do fourth step, you'd be doing it with another person. So we've given you a taste of how to do that. But the reality is when you really just learning about it and reading about it is not the same as doing it. So we hope that you would jump in and find a person to work that step with. I've entertained the idea of possibly having a Zoom meeting where we'd have much more interaction, but still praying and deciding how to do that. So, well, let's look at where we are. We're going to be in page 70. And we will finish kind of the end of the sexual inventory. I mean, it's interesting. It said, and since this is for people who struggle with sex addiction, it's a good thing to, when the big book talks about it, we might as well read it. I love this phrase. It says, suppose we fall short. Well, you know what? I'm going to go back. It's talking about sex and looking at whether it was selfish or not. We wrote it down on paper, those things that we think we harm people. It says, and so we're actually in page 69. It says, in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for a future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? That's actually a really good question anyway. There's things I want to do in life, even today, and I thought, well, is this selfish of me or is this something God would bless? So it's really good to ask that. You're going to have a better life if you invite God into it. We ask God to mold our ideas and to help us live up to them. So praying, God, shape and mold my sex life. Help me to be who you want me to be. It says, we remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we did not bring about still more harm in so doing. That's a hint at step 9. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, so this is prayer and meditation, and by this phrase here, you knew that they kind of did this every day. That was their practice. If you're not doing that every day, you're not doing the program. It won't work. That's just bold, but it's my experience. If you do it every day, you'll have so much better chance of having things turn out well. And so, give yourself time to learn how to do that every day. No one's perfect, but yeah, if we want to be sober, we have a morning meditation and we have an evening prayer and meditation. So in meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. And that phrase is used a couple of times in AA book here. So if you wait and ask God, please guide me, and we're sincere, then he will show us what to do. It says God alone can judge your sex situation. I like that phrase because I think we're so afraid of being judged. We might be judging ourselves a lot. And it's like, just let God judge you. You take one step at a time and he'll help you walk out of whatever bad situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but let God be the final judge. So, what is this saying? When you're going through to look at who you would try to help, who would you make amends and to deal with this, um, people can be helpful, like a sponsor or the person you, and we're going to talk about what your fifth step and how it's heard, but um, can be helpful, but God will be the final guiding person to help you with this. It says, we realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. I will say that that's kind of a mystery, but it gives us a hint of what might have been going on in recovery circles. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so. But this is only a half truth. It depends on us and on our motives. So this is hinting at that some people, again, this program was to help people get sober from alcohol, but it was suggesting if they're going to still be not appropriate sexually, they're going to get drunk. There's a lot of stories of people meeting people in meetings, or they start to have, these relationships, even just not even sexual relationships, but just let's go find a date, and it just doesn't work out. I also want to point out that it's really hard to get sober in SA or any of the 12 step for sex addiction if you're going to use other drugs and alcohol. And there are people that just drink one drink a week. I would just question that if your life is really struggling with sex addiction and you want to do anything to get sober, why not give up anything that could possibly be a problem there? And I've seen it happen where people then start to get recovery when they don't drink much or at all, because then they start to get sober and they start to have much more clarity in their life. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to get drunk. We are not theorizing. These are the facts out of our experience. And again, this is a great phrase, that what you're getting from the AA people is usually facts from their experience. I mean, it's somewhat of an opinion, but it's just this is what bore out in their experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. So this is how simple it is. God, help me to do the right thing. God, give me the strength to do the right thing. God, help me to be sane here. God, help me to know what the right ideal is. And give me guidance into these situations, which I'm not sure what to do with. And that's the prayer. And it's spelled out right here. So that's how you take something that's read and turn it into action, which is prayer. If sex is very troublesome, maybe sex addiction, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when we yield. When to yield would mean heartache. So what's interesting about this, it's almost as if they're encouraging what I would call codependency. Like if you just work a lot with others, it might quiet that sexual urge. As much as we don't want to totally say, well, that's all you have to do, I think, no, some people find themselves in a sex addiction situation where they actually have to work all the steps for that. We don't want to throw out this valuable advice that somehow if we lose ourselves and start just helping others or doing things that are helpful to others, it actually does help. Like when one's tempted, they could quickly say, God, what is it that you want me to do? Like, what is your holy will? Give me the right decision here. Help, what is the next right action? Okay. So if we have been thorough about our personal inventory, step 4, we have written down a lot. Now, this sounds like something voluminous and counter to the simplicity of just listing things. I think that we know they didn't do these long-winded stories and 40 pages of it. No, it was just listed a lot. We listed and analyzed our resentments. So I don't think they analyzed them in writing. We began to comprehend their futility and their fatality. Once you start to connect the dots, that whatever resentments you have or fears you have, it's always going to the same places. I'm selfish and I want what I want, and I'm afraid I'm not going to get that. So what's the quickest path to solution? To say, God, what do you want? Help me to do what you want and give me the strength to do that. We will start to see the terrible destructiveness. We will begin to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. Again, another encouragement to see that. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct. This is step 8 and 9. And we're going to straighten out the past if we can. So you can see that in this section of the writing, they're kind of mixing the steps. In this book, we read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you're convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision, step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, step 4, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. With me here? So we're in chapter 6, and what page here? 72. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, to discover the obstacles in our path. In other words, the things that are blocking us from His grace or power. We have admitted certain defects, step 4. We have ascertained in the rough what the real trouble is, that's step 4, knowing our defects. That's the real trouble, our defects. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. Boy, what language. It almost sounds like casting out a demon, but I like that. To cast your cares upon him, for he cares for you, is the same word to cast out a demon. What does cast mean? Well, I looked it up and it said to hurl down violently. So we want to be so rid of my selfishness, my controlling spirit, my resentfulness, my fault finding, my too sensitive, my worry, catastrophic thinking. That's what you gather up like a, you gather it up like weeds, and then you lay it down and you ask God to remove this. Yeah, that's as simple as it gets. This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we will have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. By the way, I'll stop here. I get asked the question many times, can I just do this by myself? Can I get a book, pencil, paper, and just have this? You can, it won't get you sober. People have tried it. It it hasn't worked. In the earliest edition of the AA book, in the last stories, there was a story I think called The Lone Ranger or something like that, where a person had the I was distracted because I saw our Wi-Fi seems pretty slow, but sorry about that. Um, this Lone Ranger, and they took that story out because the person didn't stay sober. Okay. So yes, you have, and that's why I go to meetings. That's why I get a sponsor, and it will work. And the action here is to share with another human being. So that is what's necessary. If you leave out this vital step, it won't work. Again, think essentials. If you don't have the essentials to recovery, which we talked at the very beginning, absolute surrender, sharing, amends, and guidance, it's not going to work. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first is if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking or lust. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives, trying to avoid this humbling experience, keyword humbling. They have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk or act out again. Having persevered with the rest of the problem, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their housekeeping. They took an inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they have not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their story. By the way, this takes courage, and I have a lot of respect for people in program. It takes fearlessness, it takes honesty. And so they share with some other person all their life. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. So do sexaholics. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. Again, here's that stage metaphor. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation. I'll add the word impression, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. When you open up your heart and just share the real you with someone, and if you're in the Christian persuasion, we call this confession, God will really heal you. He will bind things on earth and they'll be bound in heaven. He'll loose things on earth and they'll be loosed in heaven. So that's Christianity. But in this program, that's how it is. You will walk away free and freer, not worrying what people think of you. And you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. The inconsistency is made worse by things he does on sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. Boy, this sounds like sex addiction. This is written 50 years earlier, I think. He is under constant fear and tension that makes for more drinking. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in their medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chances for recovery. I don't believe that that fits today. But in the early days, I'm only guessing that sometimes when therapists or people that are there to help people can't fix it, then they kind of just blame the person. And I see that with things now that but alcoholism, we now know what to do. I had this thought because I've worked with people for years, and some people I wonder they struggle, 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 and struggle, struggle, struggle. Maybe it's step 5. Maybe that there's still things in their inventory they held on to. Maybe I would offer that to them as a suggestion. It says we must be entirely honest with somebody. If what? If we expect to live long or happily in this world, rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. Those of us belonging to a religious denomination, which requires confession, must, and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. Interesting. So there it is, folks. If your religion has confession, then it's there. I do find that step 4 work can be done with another person, and sometimes it's just more involved than what a priest might have time for, a pastor might have time for. But you can prepare well. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. I don't hear that in meetings often. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Wow. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics or sexaholics. It says if we cannot, or rather would not do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouth, understanding friend. Perhaps a doctor or psychologist will be the person. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents which would hurt them and make them unhappy. That's tricky. That's tricky because I don't know if any wives or parents, people don't feel unhappy by the situation, but I think that not being honest is another side. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand will yet be unaffected. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Another good rule. I will say what's fascinating is in therapy, I hear, phrases like, oh, don't be so hard on yourself. I wonder if that's really good advice. I think there are times when we are too hard on ourselves, but I'm not sure. We might have a society where we're not hard on ourselves enough. And we tend to shift the responsibility, explain away, defend. I had a friend who coined the term dextrify. Dextrify means to defend, explain, and justify. Yeah. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. I'm not sure if that fits, but it might. It may be you live in a remote area, it's 2 hours away from a meeting. Well, and it could be in context of how quickly they work these steps. And so they're just talking about postponing it. And maybe that's why they just said, well, they thought postpone it maybe a week until you can find someone. It says, postponing it 5 months or because you're going so slow is not this. I'm going to move this aside here. If that is so, the step may be postponed. Only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the very first opportunity. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve of what we are driving at, that he will not try to change our plan. The plan for what? To repent, to make amends, to do this. So usually someone in the program. But we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory and we're prepared for a long talk. So it does appear that this part of the story is that they may have written their inventory by themselves. But I have found that we know they probably did it both ways, and it's probably preferable to do it with the person. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged on a life and death errand. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. By the way, and it's been pointed out to me that why is it written as though they would be sharing their fifth step with someone who's not in 12 steps? Because at the very beginning of 12 steps, this is written 4 years into that, there weren't as many groups and opportunities for sponsors as there are today. And so their fifth step might have been heard by the clergyman or a trusted friend or even a counselor, psychologist. But as more and more members started to develop, then there were plenty of people in AA to help. It says most people will want to help. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. This sounds like good confession. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink or the lust problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we're on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I wouldn't get hung up on terminology, but people say, well, isn't the way to God narrow? Yeah, so I just kind of ignore this. I think if we wanted to give the best possible version of this, it's like we're not so trapped as we were before. We're connecting with God. I don't think that in the context of this means that anything goes, whatever God you want and all that stuff. Yeah, I don't think it means that because we're walking hand in hand with the Spirit or God of the universe. It says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. So this would be after our fifth step. And again, we talked about how you could do 6 and 7 right there. I don't see why on earth you would wait. But and I used to read this verbatim and told people do this literally, like take the book off the shelf, But it says, we return home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. That sounds like good. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page. Sorry, folks. We turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we had admitted anything. For we are building an arch through which we could walk a free man or woman at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? How important is this to do this? Well, here's something apparent. Like if he's writing this, take this book off the shelf. Okay, the first 4 years, they didn't have a book to pull off the shelf. I mean, they had other writings. They had the Bible. They also had books from the Oxford groups, by the way, which are very fascinating to read. They almost mimic the AA book. A famous one was a guy by the last name of Kitchen, and he wrote a book called I Was a Pagan. And he was a successful businessman, but drowning in alcohol and got better. And when you read that, you go, my gosh, the AA people borrowed that. Well, it's because they were so doused in that literature. But so going home, taking the book from the shelf, rereading the 12 steps, is that a bad idea? Not a bad idea. If you're on a roll, it seems tedious to do that because you already just want to get rid of these defects of character. Your head is buried in shame. Why wouldn't you just pray and ask God to remove it? Rather than, well, I'm going to go home and think about it. Maybe this emphasizes the thoroughness of how we want to be thorough, but I do see it as kind of redundant. But I used to do it a different way. If we can answer to our satisfaction, meaning we're ready to move ahead, then we look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove all these things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. Okay, well, that's as simple as step 6 is. If we're ready, then we go immediately to step 7. When ready, we say something like, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you will now remove from me every single defect of character, which I usually list them out like impatience, pride, arrogance, control, too sensitive, self-pity, which stands in my way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. And you've done step 7. In the original text, it said, humbly ask God on our knees. So we know that it was a little bit of a prayer session there with another person. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Again, you'll hear this action, action, action. You don't hear, we'll go to a group and do step 8 over the month of August because that's the 8th month of the year and stretch things out. No, there's this constant, it's almost like cracking the whip. That may be a little bit too dramatic, but they just keep on emphasis going through this. I think any addict struggles with slothfulness, which you can pray against, which is diligence. It's the opposite virtue. It says, now we need more action, with which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have listed all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took an inventory. Oh, so really, you could just go in and circle those people that you have harmed. We subjected ourselves to drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which have accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we hadn't the will to do this, we ask ourselves until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol or less. And that's true. If you don't have the willingness to go to any lengths, then there's nothing that can be done. And I run into this a lot. People say, well, that's too far to go to a meeting, or I don't want to go to a meeting, or I'm not sure I can do this or that. And it's like, I don't know what to say. I do know that this is how this works. If a person's desperate enough, they'll get sober. So we're going to do something that we typically do is, we end the session at step 8, but we'll pick up step 8 again. But step 8 really only takes 5 minutes. It's a list of all the people you've harmed. Nothing more is done with that. You don't decide whether you make amends to them or not. You just have to be willing to make amends to them. Step 9 takes time to read, and we won't read every detail of it, but it takes some time to make these amends. After step 9, you would be a recovered addict. Your chances of using go way down. So you go right to it. And we know in the early days that often the sponsors were out in the car praying, helping when the person was in doing their amends with family members or a business associate or whatever. It says probably there are still some misgivings. Yeah, we're all afraid to do this. We just are. I will say that it works, though. You'll be pleasantly surprised just taking ownership of what we did. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be reassured. Some people we need not or probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature of our approach. We might prejudice them. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be maximum of service to God and people about us. So as you read this, and you're welcome to read ahead, you're going to find that there's this aspect that we're sharing almost our spiritual experience. We're sharing more than, I'm sorry, I've really wronged you. I'm here to make amends. That there's this aspect that we're sharing a little bit more of, maybe I am an alcoholic or a sexaholic. Some places you won't be sharing that, but you would be making amends, because to share that, you might actually be harming them. Say like you lied to someone about something unrelated, to, adding the burden of your personal life just adds to it. But some cases, like a spouse, I think it's not going to work if you're not honest there. So we will deal with that next time for sure. I so appreciate asking for forgiveness and expecting probably in the future before, but I apologize again for having to not be here tonight, but it couldn't be helped. Well, it could have been, but it seemed like this was the best choice. So I wish you well. I don't know when we'll meet again, but we will, by God's grace. I'll post something when we can. There's anniversaries, Father's Days. Both our mothers are not feeling well and doing well. So anyway, you guys take care, and I wish you a great day in recovery.